Today I'm joined by Aya Yousef, a fellow change agent and Chegg.org top 50 Global Student Prize. And it's amazing for you to agree to join us today and to do an interview. Thank you ever so much for taking the time. I appreciate you've got so many things going on with your community work and all your exams, which you're currently studying for as well. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Elliott. It's my pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. I was reading through your profile, and it's just so fascinating to go through all your different experiences and such a positive impact that you've made, both on like the student body at your university, but also your broader impact as well on the community. Would it be possible to ask you some questions about that?
Sure thing. Go
Amazing,
ahead.
thank you. So I was reading about your previous experience, particularly in the Palestinian refugee camp in Beirut. I just wondered if you'd like to tell us more about that particular experience.
So let's start with personal problems, which led me to be able to give back to the community freely. So personally speaking, I saw the part of access to education in terms of like everything that's related to high school material or like applying to scholarships and universities in the later stage at high school. So personally, I found that a lot of students struggle to make it and have the opportunity in order to get enrolled at any university. So starting with that, I started to relate to many personal problems and with the other students. So having said that, I started personally to share the knowledge that I get, whether it's simply the information about any scholarship that I found online through my research with the other classmates in my class. So that was like a very personal initiative. And starting from that then, and after graduating from high school, I partnered with two other guys in order to make the impact larger. Starting back then, we had like series of workshops for students, for high school students. It's mainly awareness to make sure that every single student we can reach out to is aware of the available scholarships and universities in Lebanon that they can apply to, whether through us or on their own. But that's like a way in order to link students to the universities and scholarships. And it included many, let's say, diverse background of students, whether they are Palestinians, Lebanese, and way more. It didn't stop there. And I remember in 2019, there's something called Millennium Fellowship Program, where we had to come up with an idea and give back to our community. So one of the partners that I partnered with concerning the educational part, we worked together on something called Web for Change program, which was targeting the underprivileged people in the camps, specifically the Palestinian camps around the area in Lebanon, whether in Beirut, Saida, and way more. We prepared the students with technical tools such as WordPress, which is to develop websites, in order to open an eye for technology. And the theme was about like making a change or solving a problem in their community through developing a website. So like what these it helped the community specifically in the camps with developing tools in order to solve a problem. That's how we can form change makers in a way.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's fascinating to hear about how you got involved with supporting your peers. And you mentioned something really interesting about scholarship opportunities that you mentioned and the fantastic support that you're providing. I wondered if there was an issue around either people just didn't know the scholarships were available and they didn't know how to apply to them, or whether there's another issue about actually the range of scholarships available to prospective students and the basically lack of scholarship support there originally, or was a combination of the two?
Okay, so it's kind of in the combination of two, specifically after the crisis in Lebanon. So to start with, the students weren't really aware of these opportunities. Where we reached out, I personally got engaged with the outreach team of some of the scholarships, and I had to visit several schools. And by then, I realized that many schools and many students weren't aware of the scholarship opportunities that were available already. After then, after being and having the students engaged with such mentality or like a mindset of reaching out and researching more. And after COVID, unfortunately, and after the economic crisis in Lebanon, we've lost a lot of scholarship opportunities. So it's really a combination of two, but it started as students lacking the knowledge about them, but now we have, unfortunately, both.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you mentioned about the economic crisis that you've unfortunately been experiencing. Do you mind providing a bit of a background to our listeners today as to basically how that came about and where you are with it now?
So basically, as a response from my side to the economic crisis, which is basically the dollar rate is insanely increasing and everything is getting expensive and expensive. Even food is expensive, but it comes to the transportation where you need to get to university, but it's getting really hard because of transportation crisis too. As a response to that, I started my freelance jobs, which is like how it all started with graphic design and social media management and design as well. So I also took over architectural projects as a freelance. This is how I really managed, but in terms of scale or impact, I've already stopped my kind of engagement in my already company just to the educational one. So in terms of a larger impact, it didn't really affect me that much because I was trying to balance it up with my jobs, even though they are part-time, but I'm trying my best in order to keep myself up with that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really interesting to hear what your experiences are in relation to that. So I was reading about your To Read online platform that you co-founded.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering basically how that came about. It sounds like such a fantastic initiative. Why did you basically decide to implement it in the way that you did, and what sort of work are you doing on the online platform?
Yeah, so as I said before, it all started as a personal initiative, and then when I partnered with other to change, so that's how partially To Read started. So when we started to have the same vision and very mutual knowledge about all the process to like come up to like apply to universities and scholarships, we started to gain like more students to reach out to, more universities, more schools. So that's how it started mainly. So it's like personal initiatives that were paired together. So after then, we started to reach more students and we started to implement like more programs in order to reach out to more students and universities. We've also partnered with different organizations in order to reach out to have like more outreach. And basically, we pivoted a lot throughout the process. So we started with just organizing events, helping students out, and then we were thinking of having To Read as like the common application where you apply to universities in the US and more. So why not have To Read as the common application, but in the Middle East or in the MENA region? So that's mainly how it started. But unfortunately, I'm not an active co-founder currently, but that didn't stop me from being a change maker in my community, and that's pushing me further for having different fields in my profile where I actually got engaged in the agricultural field throughout the previous summer, where we actually built a prototype for like farmers or any user that wants to plant something, and this is like kind of working on the ecosystem or like generally the food system, food security.
That's fantastic. It sounds like it's so applicable across different sectors potentially, and in different regions of the world as well. So it's fantastic to hear how that came about. I was also really interested about the other volunteering that you were doing, particularly around the unfortunate aftermath of the explosion in Beirut in August 2020. And I was just wondering basically how you got involved and basically what you decided to work on as a part of that volunteering.
So actually, to start off with, it was basically an opportunity where we reached out, myself and my team for sure. Our professor who already taught us surveying, which is a course at the American University of Beirut for architecture students. So what we started off with is we went on site and Mar Mkhayed, and there was a cluster of buildings that we took over 2 buildings. And then we started assessing the building in terms of story it is and in terms of architectural history. So as a group of four, and we also coordinated with other teams in order to be able to work fully on this building and have all the drawings related to it affected after the explosion in specific. So we developed a series of architectural drawings for this building needed to be able to understand fully this building. So our team in specific was responsible for these drawings. The other teams were responsible for the historical analysis, and that's mainly how the tasks were divided. But it was a very successful project, and actually we celebrated the full renovation of this building last week, and it was really awesome.
That's amazing, and congratulations. That's such a fantastic achievement, and it's amazing that you were able to also apply your interest in your degree studies to this particular challenge that you've been facing. So it's thank you so much for sharing that. That is really interesting. Finally, I just wondered what motivates you. You're involved in such a range of fantastic projects, all that seem to be in slightly different areas. So what's your core driving force?
Yeah, so I'll start saying that it's the better future that mainly motivates me to keep pushing forward and develop myself, and whether it's about the skills, self-learning stuff, and way more. So me being engaged in different fields is simply me trying to have a better future in many fields. So having said that, it's including architecture, agriculture, the educational field in our country, and way more. And being a refugee in Lebanon is pushing me way further, because a lot of rights are not fully given to us, if I may say. So that's pushing me way further in order to have not fantastic, but special change that I can achieve, whether it's for my own country, my own homeland, or this country in specific, for being 21 years on this land and being very grateful for this chance. So I can also say that what motivates me is myself, because I always find myself improving and I don't know the actual term is.
That's okay. It sounds like you're a very compassionate individual who's wanting to make the world a better place, and it's so empowering for other young people such as myself to see the example that you're setting, and actually how the projects that you're working on can quite easily be applied to other areas, and how we can kind of take a lead on your example and start to implement some very similar things in a similar way to continue the work that you're doing. And it really is fascinating to see how you've applied your degree studies and your just general interest in these areas, and made such a substantial change to other people's lives. And I think that's so powerful and actually very motivating for the rest of us. Thank you ever so much for sharing your experiences today. I've definitely learned a lot from it, and I'm sure that everyone else who would be listening to this has as well. We'll definitely have to get you back to do another one, or to do potentially some sort of live seminar or something, whatever you feel most comfortable with, because I think there's so much that we can discuss, and it's so difficult to discuss it in such a short amount of time. Thank you ever so much. I really appreciate your time with us today. I know you've got so many things going on with all the projects that you're doing, as well as your degree as well. It sounds like you've got a number of full-time jobs that you're trying to balance alongside each other. So we really do appreciate you coming along and talking to us today.
Thank you so much, Elliott, for this opportunity. Really, it's my honor and pleasure.